the red center of fusion and dying. Phisano pushed the glass open, leaving dirty handprints where he had laid his touch. Quickly, before entering, he removed his cowl to wipe away the sandy grime. That was what was most polite, after all. Once inside, the sound of workless hustling, papers flying, and the heavy taste of sandy rock salt, a byproduct of the fusion process, was thick in the air. Phisano pulled his cowl over his nose and mouth to avoid breathing them in. This was nothing like his own office Verdantia. Verdantia's center of fusion was quiet, composed, sophisticated, even stuffy at times. While here it was noisy, brash, spontaneous. And it was only now that Phisano truly felt like he was out of his element. He looked over at the reception desk and noticed that the receptionist was in discussion with another visitor, the pair screaming back and forth. Not wanting to get involved, Phisano walked through and hoped that they had a similar layout to the office at home. As he wandered aimlessly in the halls, Phisano got strange looks from passerbys. He walked the entire length of the first 2 floors before he finally admitted that he was lost and couldn't relocate the stairwell. Instead, he walked to a multi-floored atrium which was cut out in the center of the building, and admired another fresco above, famous for weather-inspired patterns. Each department had its own weather theming. The dyers had falling leaves, the fuses snowflakes, and the sketches raindrops. Upon looking up, Phisano saw patterns uncommon for the Scarlish, cosmic patterns. Little stars etched into the glass peppered the ceiling, creating a cosmos of constellations. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a feminine voice behind him. Phisano turned to look at the source of the voice. A young woman stood next to him, clad in the traditional robes of a head fuser, hers red in opposition to his green. "You are Master Argentum, correct? Head fuser and dyer of Verdantia. Very impressive," she said with brash assertiveness. The shock of being recognized, even with his bright green robes contrasting the dark red around him, immediately took Phisano aback, and he felt off kilter right away. Yet, most impressive of all, you encountered Vanta, and still made it here. "The green you may indeed be," she continued. Phisano was now beginning to feel the familiar jitters of nervousness. How did this woman know so much about him? She must cast a rather large net across the city, if that information had already reached her. Avoiding her eye, he looked around the glass surrounding him, glancing at each side and then at the floors below. He was about to muster the courage to speak with his enigmatic companion, when a familiar shadowy figure caught his eye. He now noticed that the figure was hairless and had much paler skin than that of his people. But that was all he could make out, before the figure hid in the corners of the building, almost a silhouette. He turned to inquire of the woman regarding his stalker, but when his eyes left the figure, it was gone. Thoroughly dazed now, Phisano engaged the woman standing next to him. She was, after all, imperative to his goal. "Sorry, ma'am, my backwardness seems to present itself now, for I do not know your name, nor as many details about you as you do about me. I'm only here to speak with the head fuser of this city, which I can now see I'm in the presence of." He tried his best to be as eloquent as possible, feeling, for the first time, embarrassed of his home. She laughed, a rough chuckle. Still, it was a delightful sound. "None are as apt to know as much as I, Argentum. May I call you Phisano? He nodded his assent. In my time here, I have taken up more than the art of the Vitritects. I am very interested in the affairs of our kingsmen. As are you, if what I've heard of your goal is true. It is true I need your help, and that of our kingsmen as well. I believe my goal to be virtuous and worthy of collaboration, even after all the years of segregation, Phisano replied to her pleading. I'm quite inclined to agree with you, but you'll need to speak with the others, the other two elder tribes at least. We can't commit our resources to you until I know you'll succeed. I am sorry. Please, though, do stay here tonight. We have an inn naught but 60 steps from the entrance. It is unsafe to travel this night. The woman spoke as she stared up at the fresco. I am Grade Aurum. It's been a pleasure. She stuck out her paw as she introduced herself, the smile on her lips contrasting the steel in her eyes. Phisano took it in his and shook, though he was now despondent. He turned and left without saying any more, no longer caring about being rude. Scarleland was the first hurdle, and he'd fallen at it. His goal now seemed magnitudes farther than when he had left Videntia. As he exited the fuser's office, he looked back and saw the same shadowy figure tailing him once again. A sense of unease kept him from confronting it. Instead, Phisano sped towards the inn, shaken by his interaction with the so-called Vanta and his tailor in the shadows. He agreed with Garud that tonight was best spent indoors. A pleasant, if not sleepless night, dawdled past in the inn, and he rose from his bed as dawn began because of the lack of blackout sheets attached to the rooms, like those that were custom at home. Phisano left the inn to see his thistle resting in the adjacent paddock. He did not know how it had arrived there, but when he approached, he saw fresh saddlebags stacked with provisions, and a small note tied around its sinewy neck. When he opened it, Phisano couldn't help but laugh. I've had some supplies arranged for you, and made sure your steed is ready for the long journey. Good luck with your vision, and be wary of Vanta. Aurum. Phisano couldn't help but smile as he hopped onto his steed's back and set out to the vast desert, unsure of his final destination. Behind him, he saw another rider setting out in a similar orientation, its rider obscured by a flare of sunlight bouncing off the surrounding scarlet buildings. He looked behind him at the ruby towers of Scarleland one last time. While he wouldn't say he enjoyed his time there, the city's rough and laissez-faire approach to its citizens was a very large culture shock to Vidantia's patrolling obsidian heats, not to even mention its tight passageways and high windows that seemed to make the city seem so much bigger than its rusty glow suggested. But even still, Phisano couldn't help but find the novelty of it all so terribly exciting. The breaking in convention, the change in the norm, it was something that was impossible back home. And if his vision was completed, hopefully it could one day be something all Vitritects could enjoy. He passed the outer borders of Scarleland, and now finally made the decision that he'd been putting off, yet in a twist of fate, would not matter in the end. After some further consideration, he had decided Viola would be his next destination. Hopefully, someone there would help him, if they could tear themselves away from their art studios and poetry halls. At a rapid pace, They tore across the desert, sand flying behind them, glittering in the air. He was still within eyesight of the tallest buildings of Scarleland when it came again. That sound.